Here on The Colour of Country Life, great to be chatting with the member for Mallee, the National Party's Anne Webster. Anne, good to be out of isolation.
Oh, yes, indeed. Anyone who's done the whole ISO thing is always very happy to get out. So had my first coffee this morning. Very nice.
The first coffee is always the sweetest. So where are you in the electorate today?
I'm down in Maryborough as we speak. In fact, I'm in Denali. Just announced a $3.6 million sporting complex for Denali people, which is absolutely fantastic, should the coalition be re-elected. So it's a project that I've been fighting for with them for a couple of years, and fantastic to be able to announce it this morning.
Now, you've made a number of big announcements during the campaign and been ably assisted by some of your National Party colleagues. Just a quick run through, who have you had visit the electorate supporting you from the coalition?
I've had Minister Mackenzie, who came to announce with me $3.3 million for La Trobe University for the wet lab, so that a biomedical science degree can be undertaken in Mildura. Fantastic for STEMs, fantastic for medical pathways to postgraduate medical degrees, and generally just wonderful to be able to announce that. I've had Barnaby Joyce announcing $13.5 million for Mildura Tracks and Trails. I think we might have spoken about that one.
Yes.
What else? It's been a busy time, despite the fact that I've been in ISO. And we've got a few more announcements in the next day. So
we'll keep an eye out for those. And another one that was close to the hearts of our friends at Matoa was, of course, the childcare centre announcement as well.
Of course. And then, of course, you've got Davis Park. No ministers with me for those for nil. And that was a very important $1.65 million announcement as well.
And you've said to us you've got a fair bit of unfinished business as well, and some you'd like to have seen, if I've got this right, you'd like to have seen more money come into Mallee, but that's sort of more of the work you're looking to do in your second term, I gather.
Absolutely. Look, there is much more to do, and healthcare is, as you know, high on my radar, along with connectivity, and we've got some great announcements that we're making about connectivity and NBN and roads, of course. So, $45 million for the Sunraysia Highway. And, look, too much to on my wish list still, actually, Ricky.
Yeah, a lot to achieve, and you've got a few contenders. You had to cope with that when you won the seat the first time around, and you've got some independents running in the seat as well. What's your case for a major party getting elected in the seat of Mallee?
Well, I think the evidence is clear that it is only a major party that is, and particularly a party that is focused on regions, who is going to be able to continue to deliver for regional communities. Labor Party has shown quite clearly it is not interested in the regions, and their ag visa and their 450GL announcements have just proven that. And also the risk that the local roads and community infrastructure funding, they will not commit to that. That's really concerning for regional communities. And independents, they can talk in the corridors, and they can put up policies, and doesn't mean they're going to be listened to. And ultimately, we need the major parties to be strong and to have a strong government and a strong opposition.
Well, I spoke to one of the independent candidates, Sophie Baldwin, earlier today, and she mentioned the 450 gigalitres, saying it can't be delivered effectively through the Murray Channel. It's actually doing damage in places like Kundruk. Are you that far apart from her on that policy position? You've mentioned the 450 as a concern.
I just don't believe it should be taken up at all. And in fact, the Nationals have made it quite plain through the neutrality test that if there are social or economic factors that mean that communities will be worse off, that no water can be taken from the river and from consumptive pools. So it just should not be taken out. And for Labor to indicate that they will, even with buybacks, is just a horrendous threat to the horticultural industry.
Well, and it's a threat as well. When we spoke with Senator Rex Patrick, independent senator for South Australia, he said, well, there'll have to be buyback if there's what he calls a breach of the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement if the 450 isn't achieved by 2024. I imagine you wouldn't be too happy about buybacks occurring either.
None. Not happy at all. And the horticultural agricultural industry is quite plain that it is very damaging and leaves a patchwork quilt of horticultural and agricultural land which has no water. So it's hugely problematic. It's not a small threat, it's a big threat. And I'm very anxious if Labor are returned.
But even if they're not returned, or if you're returned in government, this 450 gig with the Premier Peter Malinauskas in South Australia saying he wants it delivered, what will be done under the Basin Plan where there is this expectation it will be delivered?
Well, we've already got an agreement that if the neutrality test is applied for any socioeconomic damage to communities. So if there is any threat that a community is going to be worse off by any buybacks, by any water being taken out of the consumptive pool, then it can't be taken out, period. That's the agreement. So, Mr. Malinauskas can demand all he likes. There is a basin state agreement on the neutrality test, which has been instigated by the federal government.
Now, like you mentioned, Labor, with their policies, they're not really running very strong from what we can see, not made their candidate available for interview in Mallee. It deals the independents in. We spoke with Sophie Baldwin. She wouldn't commit one way or the other to Scott Morrison or Anthony Albanese if she was in a hung parliament. What does that say about voting for independent in Mallee?
Look, I think it's a risk. The fact is that an independent should be able to stand by and speak up for who they will side with when it comes to a hung parliament. They have to agree to one or the other should there be a hung parliament. It's not a matter of, policies. The government, the coalition have made it quite clear what their policies are. Labor have made it quite clear what some of their policies are. There is certainly greater risk. And independents should be honest enough and transparent enough to make that plain to constituents. Ultimately, people make their vote on the basis of what they believe is going to be the outcome. And for an independent to say, there's nothing to see here and I'll decide on the day, is just not good enough.
Well, Anne Webster, I know you're tight for time. Thank you very much for joining us today on the campaign trail out of ISO, and we look forward to talking to you on election night.
Good on you. Thanks so much, Ricky.